Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Ty. Our guest today is Ljupco Fidanovski, founder and CEO of E3 Management Solutions. In this episode, Ljupco and Jotham share the nuances of leading finance teams through growth and transformation. Ljupco shares his journey from hands-on finance operator to trusted advisor, offering insights into team building, partnering with founders, and adapting to the ever-evolving needs of scaling companies. Now, our host, Jotham Ty.
Hey, Ljupco, welcome to the Accounting Live podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Jotham, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
As I mentioned before we hopped on, this is always a great chance for me to learn about new people and new journeys. I know we've had similar backgrounds on the consulting side, so looking forward to this discussion. And just to kick things off, to a quick start here, start from the beginning. How did you get to where you are today with E3, and tell us more about your journey.
Yeah, no, my journey is very much the classic, American immigrant story. I was born in a small town in what is now, North Macedonia. Back in the day was part of Yugoslavia, and came here to the U.S. at age 6 with my mom, and we settled in San Pedro, California. The port of L.A. We are working class. We joined my maternal grandparents who had gotten here a few years earlier in 1968. So interesting times to come out here, and my grandfather really was the trailblazer in the family. He arrived here, classic, came here with a small suitcase, few bucks in his pocket, no English skills, but a deep sense of responsibility, this incredible determination and unrelenting drive just to sort of, do something better for his family. So in 1975, my mother and I joined the rest of the family, and that's where our kind of journey began. And San Pedro was at the time a melting pot, lots of home to, Italian, Croatian, all kinds of cultures and communities. And my grandparents ran a small weaving business, making wool blankets, and I helped however I could. My mom was always working multiple jobs growing up. So that work ethic, the perseverance, the resilience sort of stuck with me. And I suppose that kind of defined my leadership style on a foundational level to this day. At the same time, being in LA, I was exposed to the entertainment industry and really was kind of drawn to it, although I really wasn't sure in what capacity. I was fortunate enough to get into UC Berkeley, where I majored in finance and marketing. And then after graduating in 91, I returned to LA, and after a few early career lows, found my way to the studio world, where I was, over the next 25 years, I built a career in that sector, holding leadership roles across finance, strat planning, sales planning, business development. Then after that, around sort of toward the end of that exercise, like a lot of people in their mid-career point, I kind of hit a moment where I wanted to step back and think about, what was next. I was looking for some intellectual challenge and something additive to my professional experience, but at the same time, something fun, adventurous, inspiring, rejuvenating. And that led me actually back to school. So I ended up enrolling in this great executive MBA program through UCLA Anderson and the National University of Singapore. And it was an incredible experience that really opened my eyes and got me seriously thinking about starting my own business. And that was really sort of where I kind of got this idea of I wanted to do my own thing. I suppose in many ways it was always there, growing up in the community that I did with my grandparents and with their business. That entrepreneurship bug was kind of hiding and dormant. And but it finally sort of came out. And
a lot of this is hitting home for me. And of course, we'll get to E3 in your business in a second, but I just wanted to comment how similar our stories were. And, whenever I ask people to share their journeys with me, you get all sorts of different, obviously, upbringings and different experiences. But with yours specifically, I mean, oh my goodness, Ljupco just hit home. So I immigrated here with my family when I was 8 years old. Similar probably experience as you, like new culture, new language. My parents also worked multiple jobs. And so, and going through school and early my career, it sounds like you kind of had the entrepreneurial spirit. And I think like that's one of the benefits for, everything that people associate with America about like, I think it sounds like you and me as immigrants, appreciate some of the things that America is able to provide, which is this opportunity to build businesses and pursue things that, I don't think in every country out there you're able to do. So I mean that just hit me in the stomach, Lucho. But I mean I think we should probably do another episode scrolling on like the immigrant accounting experience. And for me, and probably a good segue to learning more about E3. To me, accounting was kind of an opportunity for me to make my mark in the corporate world. Because
Right.
traditionally,
That was my entry point too. That was exactly
Okay.
that was my entry point. When I started at Disney, I started in accounting, and that was my sort of entry point in the corporate world, and that rigor just sort of stuck with me as I moved up the ladder in FP&A and in different functions. But that was exactly my entry.
Wow. Wow. Well, and I'm sure you can agree with this. I think accounting offers you the window to how businesses operate. I know a lot of the storytelling and accounting is through numbers, but
Sure.
it really is a great place for you to like learn the bones of a business. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for of the profession. So gosh, I've got so much in common,
No,
but
no, I couldn't agree with you more on so many levels. I think it's foundational, and even if you don't stick with accounting as sort of the thing, it's such a great foundational uh, skill set that it no matter what direction you take, it feels like it's such an additive and foundational thing that it really helps.
from that foundation, then folks like you and I can expand it to broader areas within the corporate world, whether it be entrepreneurship and, for you specifically. And I also went through this journey myself, started a consulting practice, and it sounds like business transformation is a big part of what E3 does today. And I know you guys focus on the three E's, and the name comes from,
Sure.
efficiency and experience and, being effective. So I wanted to hear from you, why are these principles in your mind very critical to the services that you provide your consulting clients?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And when I thought about, because consulting is a very interesting space, right? It's a low barriers to entry, hyper competitive. So how do you distinguish yourself, and what do you want to focus on is kind of key. And when I thought about what kind of business I wanted to kind of get into before consulting, was sort of what I decided on. The idea came straight from years of lived experience. I kept seeing this pattern, of really important high stakes initiatives, whether it was M&A integrations or large scale transformations, finance, accounting, that were super costly, time intensive, but still failed way too often. And so usually not because the strategy was wrong, but because breakdowns in execution, alignment, leadership, whatever, and I just kept thinking, we can do this better. We don't want to just be there to solve problems. We want to help organizations and people in more meaningful and lasting ways through these exercises, right? Use these exercises as truly transformational, not just transactional, right? And so that was the idea behind, those were the seeds behind E3. And then, when I thought about the name E3 and what the E's would represent, I thought about the sort of the principles and professional values that I kind of have, and my team and the people that I work with that I bring on these projects, to the table, and that define how we create real lasting value for clients, especially, for these high stakes, high complexity transactions, M&A integrations and the organizational transformation stuff. So, when I thought about what's important, right, efficiency, huge, really matters, especially when you're in the middle of a big shift, transformation, time, resources, focuses are limited. So it's important to cut through the noise and, move quickly, without losing sight of quality, right? What we do is help simplify the complexity, reduce the back and forth, make things easier, faster, more cost effective. And that's where technology comes into play, right? It's about working smarter, not harder, so there's some real progress that can be made. So, efficiency is a big thing. I think, experience is another thing. I wanted to sort of really bring that to clients. And again, a lot of experienced folks out there doing what we do, but we bring decades of hands-on expertise across industries, transformation types, functions. So I think that this experience helps us anticipate challenges, and we ask the right questions. And we come from coming from these big organizations, we come with a certain rigor around how we think about things and making sure that we cover all bases and think about all aspects of what we're doing. But then at the end of the day, offer practical solutions. It means that we can engage at any level, from the boardroom to the operational folks that are on the front lines of this. We can really speak their languages, if you will. And we connect with them, throughout the process. And, we can talk about this more throughout the interview, but, our main thing is really connecting with the team and embedding ourselves and becoming part of the team so that we can have that confidence, and they can have that confidence in us around, what we're about to embark on jointly, right? Effectiveness, the third E is the ultimate test, where it's not enough to have a great plan or efficient processes. It's about impact, right? So we focus on trying to deliver solutions that stick, that are scalable, that succeed in a real world way. It's about measurable outcomes, helping align teams, accelerate deals, transform organizations, provide help provide some sustained performance through these transformations and through the technologies. So that's kind of how the E3s and those concepts came about. And to be honest with you, now over the years, you could easily say that, it could be easily 5 or 6 E's, because, those are the core. But, we talk a lot about excellence in what we do. We talk about enablement. We talk about empathy. These transformations are being done by human beings and folks that have been doing the good work for a long time, or maybe not a long time, depending, but still there's a sort of a human element to this that that plays a massive role in all of these transactions, and is really one of the key factors of success or failure. And so we really try to tap into that and understand that and appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier, Ljupco, that I also come from a consulting background. So all of this, again, similar and resonates with me. I ran a consulting practice, a small one, for 10 years. We were more on the compliance, Sarbanes-Oxley space, and also finance systems implementation. But the empathy part, and actually going back to a couple of the other E's, they were like people-centric, right? And at the end of the day, clients and consulting engagements are relationships. And for you to emphasize the importance of hands-on experience and immersing yourself within the environment, I mean, I think those were key strategies for me when I ran a consulting practice. If your clients had the confidence that you've been in their shoes before, and not just someone who's been in consulting forever and has not had any lived experiences, and I think that matters. And of course, as you go through, whether it's large transformation projects or M&A or what have you, when you are like immersed in the environment, like you just have a better pulse, and people take you more credibly in those situations. So, it's so. I'm gonna have to do another episode, Ljupco.
Let's do it.
Similarities.
Let's do it.
It is striking. I mean, that what you described was very similar to the playbook that I ran when I did consulting. Much different playbook now that I'm in the SaaS technology space,
Sure,
but
sure. And
definitely
I
a good
bet
segue.
I hope a lot of this resonates with the actual functional folks out there, the CFOs and the COOs and the CIOs and the controllers and so on. I think it's we're coming at it from the advisory consulting side of things, but we're really former, we've been in those shoes for many, many years. And so we approach this from that angle, from that experience, not from a lifetime of hopping from one project to another, which is fine. But that I think that's the little sort of secret sauce, maybe, or superpower that we have. And yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's about that last or that third E, right? Effectiveness. Obviously, you've demonstrated to your clients that whatever methodology playbook that you have has been effective in driving results. And so controllers and CFOs see that. And you and I know how it works. Once you're able to prove yourself to a certain group or industry, engagements just carry on, right?
Yep.
Obviously different forms in different places. I do want to spend some time. I know we don't have much time left, but transformation, I've heard that word come up a few times just in this interview, and beyond this interview and beyond this podcast, it is coming up everywhere. Like we're seeing software customers of ours now, shift people from traditional accounting roles to accounting transformation. Like obviously, some companies don't have their own internal resources, so require the ecosystem to partner with to drive transformation. So, you and I have been in the industry for a while, and we don't have to put a number on it just for uh,
Sure.
age sake. But what emerging trends, Lucho, are you seeing, and how companies now approach transformation?
I think there's been a bunch of different changes over the years. Obviously, as you said, we've been around the block a few times. Certainly, I have. I think you have a couple. I think you have a couple more blocks to go. But I think one of the major things that I've kind of noticed is this sort of shift to these transformations used to be a kind of a one-time event, right? And they used to be because of the complexity, because of the size, because of the cost. There was a lot of pressure put on these types of projects. It's like, if we're going to go through this, we're going to go through this once, and it better be great. And because we don't want to go through this again. And I think that there's a realization now that it's not that simple because of the complexities and because of what is all involved. And so, this becomes an ongoing exercise, which doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be more expensive. It's just the way you approach it needs to be more thoughtful. And that's where the preparation comes into play. And that's where, understanding what you need and what the business needs really becomes important, but also realizing that, alignment and engagement and support, without any of that, nothing sticks, right? And so you have to have not just the desire from a technology perspective to make a shift and to move to something better, more effective, more efficient, faster, functional, etc. But you got to have everything, the people around it, the structure, all of that needs to be aligned. And so, we really kind of focus on that, trying to understand, what is actually needed, and then providing a thoughtful roadmap to this. I think, so, again, getting everybody aligned, making sure that they understand that this is not a one and done, right? You can, this initial implementation is going to get you pretty far. But the reality of it is, if you really want success, you have to have a sustained effort that continues beyond that initial go live. And I think SaaS solutions help in a lot of ways, because a lot of the updates come now 2 or 3 times a year or whatever. And so, that sort of momentum there's a little bit of that kind of helps move that momentum. Another trend is speed. So, there's the pace of disruption, particularly now with AI. Companies need to move faster. They need to move more decisively. So, we help them with that agility, right? Especially during M&A transactions, reorgs, but we always keep an eye on the strategy, on the strategic goal. And I mentioned AI, data technology now is really central to these transformations. So, but it only works if it's, connected with the right processes and the people capabilities, right? And again, that's where we come in.
Yeah.
That's where we help sort of put all that together and identify any gaps and help bridge those gaps and fill those gaps. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna just say, Joe, I think people take for granted how much alignment it takes to align with this, and I'm like connecting the points that you
Sure.
shared, creating an alignment cross-functionally. People take for granted, and a lot of times business strategies change frequently, and we do that sometimes here at Gapify because the environment is moving quickly. Not only is the environment moving quickly, but the technology available to you is moving just as quickly. So, we're in the times now, and this was very different 20 years ago, where probably you and I were probably waiting on the next big solution or tool to come around. But now it's like, okay, we've got this for that part of the process. We've got these reporting capabilities. Oh, by the way, the macro climate has changed in this way.
Yeah.
And so partnering with consulting firms like yours and just creating alignment, that I think is key before you set off on any kind of transformation journey. Are we all going the same place? And
Right.
as simple as that sounds, and obviously there's some technique in laying out and explicitly calling out and designing strategies to create that alignment, but just that concept of alignment, I think gets missed a lot, and it's so crucial. So I want to stick to that for our last question here, Joe.
Sure.
Obviously alignment, especially with cross-functional transformation projects, which a lot of them are, you're gonna have to deal with finance, sales, IT. So, what's your consulting practices philosophy in creating that interdisciplinary approach?
It can be a challenge, but it can be an opportunity. And again, coming from these real world experiences, we've all been through transformations. So, we understand the dynamic really well and the importance of it. And so we do spend an inordinate amount of time talking to leadership, talking to stakeholders. The project management of these things is I don't want to say it's the easy part, but it should be more of the execution part but the planning, but for that to be successful, there's a fair amount of work that needs to get done before that. And I think we put a lot of emphasis and we put a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting on the preparation. So, we start by establishing single unifying objective, working with the client, establishing a North Star that ties finance, IT, operations, whoever, to the strategic goal, to what we're trying to accomplish. This helps prevent silos and ensures that everybody's kind of on the same page. And we stay engaged with these folks, from day one all the way to post go live. So this is not a sort of creating a sort of like an action team and then we kind of go away. No, we are engaged with them, these cross-functional sessions, throughout the project. So that helps us in multiple ways. A, get alignment that we talk about, number one. Number two, change management by default, right? Change management is, it's a discipline in and of itself, but it helps. It's sort of you're bleeding change through this engagement. You're sort of bleeding change management into the organization organically, right? Versus an actual exercise. And so when it does come time to sort of move to this new world, if you will, you're kind of already halfway there. You're sort of on second base rounding third, right? It's not this sort of big, oh my God, what's happening? Because you've got everybody engaged in operations and finance and accounting. and not just the stakeholders, but the actual people that are on the front line. So, that we bring in our team, again, using our experience, we bring that multi-domain experience. We've sat in the shoes of CFOs, CIOs, COOs. So we know how to speak the language. We know what generally, before we walk through the door, we have this sort of sixth sense of what the pain points are going to be. Obviously, every company's different. So we go in with an open mind but we are operational folks. So we come in with that embedded expertise, and we focus on delivering maximum outcomes. I mean, that means aligning not just on strategy, but on sequencing, ownership, accountability across the functions. So, the results hopefully is an integrated solution that works end to end for everybody, not just on paper, but in practice.
For our audience out there, believe me, as someone who used to run a consulting practice, what Ljupco described here is essential and also not something that we on the industry side should take for granted. I mean, I think Ljupco with E3 specifically, it goes back to one of your 3 E's experience, and you have cross-functional experience. So, you can't just go in and say, well, I know how things operate in IT, so I'm going to advise the client to do A, B, and C as part of their transformation strategy. You actually have real leaders who have, again, lived in that cross-functional area to be able to pick up on those sixth sense. And that's, I think, where the value is of partners like you. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I know, transformation is obviously a big topic for a lot of folks. Thankfully, it is now normalized in our profession that transformation is something we need to prioritize. So, hopefully for our audience out there, this gives you a good sense of who E3 is. And obviously, a big believer in your perm Ljupco, and more so now that we know we have similar upbringings and backgrounds. And yes, we will have to come back and do another episode. I already have the title on my Ljupco. It's the Accounting Immigrant Experience or something along those lines.
We got to talk about Singapore. We got to talk about, it's a lot of that experience also very much resonated with me traveling to Asia and sort of understanding the dynamic and the different approaches to doing businesses and projects and everything like that. The relationship aspect of it as well really resonated with me because that's how I am. We're very much a relationship-driven company, firm, and not just a transactional firm. And so, that's very important to me, is to have that ethos around relationship building and being able to build those connections on a little bit of a deeper level.
I love Singapore, and the deep personal relationships. It definitely came through. And the way you articulated, all your different strategies with transformation today. So I'm glad you're able to come on. Yes, we have to talk about Singapore and also more of our upbringings, and to have you back for that.
Thank you so much again. Really appreciate it. And shout out, by the way, just a slightly belated Happy Mother's Day to all of the amazing moms out there and women in general. And I'm a product of a strong, loving, and selfless woman who to this day is a huge source of inspiration, wisdom, and strength. And I know many of us have women like that in our lives. And just again, thank you for the opportunity, and a little shout out.
Definitely shout out to my mom as well before she watches this and doesn't see me add in or hear me add in. Thanks, Ljupco, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Jotham. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at gapify.com. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.